Hello, everyone. My name is Uju. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the co-director for Organ Health Equity Alliance, also called OHEA. If you're watching this video, it is likely you're here for the recording of the pre-session process and how a bill becomes a law workshop that we hosted, and it was facilitated by Lakeitha Elliott. Unfortunately, there were issues with the beginning of the recording, particularly the intro and Lakeitha's first couple of slides. So we are going to re-record those sections and then transition into the recording from that day. We apologize for this inconvenience, and if you have any questions on anything discussed today, please do feel free to email myself. My email will be in the video information box. Again, this is Organ Health Equity Alliance, OHEA. This is our pre-session process and how a bill becomes a law workshop with Lakeitha Elliott. It is the first in a series of advocacy workshops for the year, focused on building folks' capacity with engaging and understanding the legislative process and policy and advocacy work as a body of work. We did go over the tutorial, but for the purpose of this re-recording, I will not be going over that, and I will start with our land and labor acknowledgement, which is displayed in front of you. I'll read it out loud. Every community owes its existence and strength to generations of ancestors, who contributed to our hopes, dreams, and collective possibilities. Together, their history allows us to leave our own legacy of hope and justice. Our collective history is that of cultural resilience, re-indigenization, adaptability, colonization, settlement, systemic violence, racism, and forced displacement. Acknowledging this truth helps build mutual respect and connection across diverse communities and lived experiences. For our land acknowledgement, we start by acknowledging the land in which OHEA is situated and which we occupy tonight. What we know as the Portland metro area rests on traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Clackamas, Bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Malala, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River, creating communities and summer encampments to harvest and use the plentiful natural resources of the area. We're on this land because of the forced removal of its traditional peoples by white colonists and settlers. We recognize the rights of Native and Indigenous people and nations have been and continue to be denied and violated. We want to thank the original caretakers of this land and their descendants who are still here. In addition to our thanks, we encourage folks to take action in supporting Native and Indigenous communities by learning more about the Indigenous people of the land they occupy, honoring treaty rights obligations, creating deeper relationships and land back to Native communities, etc. Labor acknowledgement. We must acknowledge that much of what we know of this country today, including its culture, economic growth, and development throughout history and across time, has been made possible by the forced labor of enslaved Africans and their descendants who suffered the horror of the transatlantic trafficking of their people, chattel slavery, Jim Crow, and repressive laws, including the Black exclusion laws in Oregon, that continue to impact Black folks today. We are indebted to their labor and their sacrifice. Moreover, we must acknowledge and address the tremors and legacy of that violence throughout the generations and the resulting impact that can still be felt and witnessed today in Portland, Oregon, and beyond. We'll take a couple of seconds to pause here after reading these acknowledgements. All right, who is OHEA? So OHEA, again, stands for Organ Health Equity Alliance, and it is a people of color-led collaborative organized to center and uplift the wisdom of our communities of color through racial justice-informed health equity policies and practices as part of the movement to dismantle white supremacy and shift the imbalance of power. Our vision is that we envision a world where people of color are able to lead fulfilling and healthy lives however they choose. And we do this through three bodies of work: advocacy, where we advocate for racial justice, health equity centered policies; convener, where we convene spaces like this one to share and learn from each other around racial justice, health equity work; and then the knowledge center, which is our collection of tools, resources, curriculum, and trainings dedicated to racial justice, health equity work and practices. For this workshop, our goals, we hope that participants will learn more about what pre-session work looks like in creating a bill, how a bill becomes a law, how to build relationships and connections with legislators and administrative staff, opportunities for inside and outside organizing to ensure policies uplift racial justice. And there are a couple of reminders for folks who attended the live session below. Introduce our speaker, who you will see later in the actual recording, Lakeitha Elliott. So if the dictionary had a definition for Portland community engagement, it would feature a picture of Lakeitha Elliott. Lakeitha has spent the last 20 years advocating with and for marginalized communities and serving those communities in a variety of roles, including community organizing with the Urban League of Portland, managing Sun School programs in East Portland and Gresham, serving as a PTA leader, leading the highly successful African American Leadership Academy, a program of the Portland African American Leadership Forum, and more. Her ongoing involvement shows a commitment to the region she calls home. Her broad connections, pursuits, and accomplishments shows incredible depth and breadth of character and commitment. In addition to deep family and community connections in Portland's African American community, she has relationships and connections in both Portland's nonprofit community and in local and national political circles. Lakeitha is a proud lifetime Portlander, Jefferson High School alumni, community connector, advocate, mom, and Lala, grandma. She currently serves as the Community Engagement Director in the Oregon Legislature's House Majority Office and directs the Gorley Burke Center for Black Leadership and Civic Engagement. We're grateful for her to have her here presenting on pre-session work and how a bill becomes a law. We will then transition to the beginning of Lakeitha's presentation, which I will review, and then we'll begin the original recording. So first, there's an about me for Lakeitha, and I'll read it out loud as shown here. Born to teen parents in Northeast Portland. Parents are drug addicts. One is still on drugs, and one has been clean for 31 years. In foster care system, family care. Attended alternative high school, attended a community college with no college degree. Single parent, received SNAP, TANF, ERDC, and OHP benefits. PTA mom and leader, purchased a home with culturally specific home buyer assistance, parent of a trans kid. And then in the beginning of the workshop, Lakeitha did discuss what is a citizen legislature. So Oregon has what is called a citizen legislature, which means that the legislature is made up primarily of citizens who have a full-time occupation besides being a legislator. This also means that your legislators are everyday people who live in your communities. They come from a variety of backgrounds, usually not career politicians. They aren't paid excessive salaries. Their positions are considered part-time work. This often means they are more accessible to the people they are elected to represent, and many of them run for office because of a specific issue they're passionate about. I will end here, the re-recording here, and pass it on to the actual recording. Again, apologies for this error, and I hope this is an informative experience for you. And if you have any questions, please let us know. Thank you for listening.
Considered a part-time position. And it often means they're more accessible to people they're elected to represent. And many of them run for office because of specific issue that they're passionate about. And so we have a variety of people. We have people who are nurses. We have people who are nonprofit leaders. We have people who are parents with kids with disabilities who wanted to, wasn't getting the answers and the support that they needed. And so they decided to run for office. And so that's what I want you to be aware of, is that these people are everyday people, just like you and I. They come from a variety of backgrounds. I will say that for a long time, the legislature has been primarily white. We have not had a whole lot of diversity there, but that's changing. And so just having those new voices in this space is good. But like I said, we have people who are children of immigrants. We have people who are Muslim. We have queer people in the legislature now. And so just having those folks in the legislature now has changed the dynamics and the conversations that are happening. As I speak about that, legislators being everyday people, I'm going to share just two quick videos, and we'll talk about them once we're done. The first is of the new Speaker of the House, Dan Rayfield, and I'll share his opening remarks from opening day of this legislative session. Oh, sorry, I'm actually sharing Shamia Fagan's first, so let me see here. And can you all see the video? No? Okay, I think I have to stop sharing. One moment.
In 1997, my big brother was driving us on I-84 to East Portland.
You hear now?
In 1997, my big brother was driving us on I-84 to East Portland to see my mom for the first time in a couple of years. I was 15, and my dad was a single parent raising us in Dufur and the Dalles. My mom had been battling meth and heroin addiction, and she was homeless. But she finally had a home, and she was very proud, and she invited us to come visit her. And I remember my brother pulled up to this big, beautiful, kind of Victorian style house with a big wraparound porch. My mom greeted us at the car with hugs and walked us around to the front steps. But instead of walking up the steps, she dropped to all fours and she crawled into the porch. And then she invited us into her home. So my brother and I dropped to all fours and we crawled into the porch behind her. And we spent an afternoon in our mom's home. And she had unzipped a sleeping bag to cover the ground so that her kids were not sitting on dirt. I actually brought a photo of her with me to the floor today. Senate Bill 608 is personal for me. And I'm here to ask you to vote yes. Because families all across our state, families just like mine, are living in a housing emergency. And yes, we have to deal with these systemic issues, increasing supply, reforming our zoning laws, making major investments in renter assistance, affordable housing. But those are long-term solutions that won't have impact on families for years. Senate Bill 608 will have an impact immediately for hundreds of thousands of Oregonians who rent their homes, but are one rent spike or no cause eviction away from putting their kids to bed in the back seat of a car or pitching a tent on the side of the interstate or making a home under somebody's porch.
Okay, and I'm going to share one more. Sorry for the technical difficulty. This one may not work. Let me see. All right. Okay, so we may not get to see that one. Let me try one more thing here. Okay. Trying to share again. Okay, so we may not get to see that one, but that one was the current Speaker of the House, Dan Rayfield, and he spoke about, growing up with two parents, separated, one parent being a Republican, one being a Democrat. He talks about getting in trouble during high school, not graduating from high school, getting fired from jobs, going to college and getting arrested for DUIs. And again, he's the current Speaker of the House. And so I'm sharing that to say that our legislators are real people. They've, often they have life experiences that they bring to this work. But in that, they're also not, they're not the experts. So they have some expertise in their own lives, but they don't understand everything. They don't understand our experiences. They don't understand, things that they haven't been through. Often they are white and they don't understand the experiences of people of color. And so that's where it comes in that we have to engage and are able to engage in the legislature. So like I said, legislators and others are not the experts. You are, and your experiences and your stories matter. And so I just want to for us to take a few minutes for you all to reflect on thinking about who you are and what experiences you bring. And so, did you grow up in the city or the suburbs? Did your family experience houselessness? Are you a renter or a landlord? Was your family union? How did your family benefit from public systems, Veterans Affairs, TANF? Have those experiences been negative or positive? Are you a parent? Have you been involved in the criminal justice system? Have you experienced discrimination? What work experience do you have, or do you or someone you love experience a mental illness? And so I just want to take a few minutes to think about that and just think about all of the things that you bring to the advocacy and legislative space. And I don't know if folks want to maybe type in the chat just a few things. Are people able to chat, Uju, to type in the chat?
Yes, they are able to chat.
Okay. So if folks want to just type in the chat, maybe one or two things that brings you to advocacy work or things that you feel like you have some expertise in. And when I say that you are the experts in your life in the world. Again, our legislators don't have all of the expertise. And so are folks chatting and sharing here? I don't know that I can see. Or does anyone want to come off of mute and share? No? All right. Well, this is moving a little faster than I expected. So those are, again, a lot of what I want you to understand, what participants to understand is that our legislature is really open, and it works when people who are the experts in their life share their stories. And so that I was going to move into a break because I thought we might be further along, but I'll skip that part right now. And I will move to another story. This video is about 5 minutes long, but it tells a powerful story of how, an everyday person can impact policy. And kind of the backstory is Amber Starks was a hairdresser. She wanted to provide hair care services for Black children who were in the foster care system. And so she approached the foster care system and said, I'm open to braiding hair, doing hair for African-American children who are in the foster care system. What she was told is that you can't do that because you don't have a cosmetology license. And in the African-American community, braiding and combing hair is something that we've done for generations, something that's, rooted in Africa, something that's very cultural, that it's passed down in families. Grandmothers teach their daughters, granddaughters how to braid, and so it shouldn't take a cosmetology license to be able to do something that, that we've traditionally done. It would be kind of like a law that says that you can't make tamales if you haven't gone through culinary school, when that's something that grandparents have taught their families and passed down. And so I'll share Amber's story, and we'll talk a little bit more about how bill becomes a law. All right. moment. Okay, one moment. Okay, is that sharing?
I can hear, but I can't see.
See, okay.
This is about helping everyday people be able to, use their talent and earn a living using their talent. My only option was to change the law. I had a chance of doing something or it staying the same. And I think that I just realized that it was something worth fighting for.
I'm sorry for this. Okay, here we go.
I don't even know that I felt like
Is that
I'm the
working
one who
now?
has to do this so much as it just has to be done. My name is Amber Starks, and I own a small business called Conscious Coils. I learned that it was illegal for me to braid hair unless I had a full cosmetology license. My only option, because there weren't any kind of exemptions around it, was to change the law. I just remember thinking, that's a lot to ask of someone. My friends and some of the people who would come to the town hall meeting, said, I go to a salon and they would say, we don't have anyone who can do your hair here. For me, the idea that people were getting licenses and, someone was signing off saying you're competent to do all hair, yet they weren't. And then me, who's grown up doing it, or other people who've grown up doing it, aren't allowed to, do it because we don't have a formal education. And it really bothered me because I felt like it was really marginalizing.
She reached out to the Urban League and said, hey, I need support on this because this is where the convergence of race and politics really comes in.
I thought, well, it's kind of ridiculous that, all around the country, braiders are required to do the same curriculum that stylists who are doing chemicals or cutting and a lot of stuff that didn't have a lot to do with African hair. And so I thought, well, maybe we can do something different here in Oregon.
She had asked as a senator if I would co-sponsor the bill with Representative Alyssa Kinney-Geyer and Representative Lou Frederick.
You've got to recognize Oregon is different than a lot of other places in the country. Legislators are very approachable in this state. Other political figures are very approachable in the state as well. That's part of the charm of Oregon.
She, when it got to the Capitol, came down and lobbied down in the Capitol, and she is really the champion of this bill. I testified before the committee in the House and before the committee in the Senate, really telling the story, to folks and saying, this is why I'm doing this, not, simply because, I don't want to go to cosmetology school, but because the curriculum isn't necessarily, focused or inclusive of Black hair at most schools. And that was information I got, talking to people who had gone through school. This is about people in my community not only being able to practice a craft that we've practiced culturally for generations, but in addition, this is economic opportunity. I had a chance of doing something or it staying the same. And I think that I just realized that it was something worth fighting for. Like, my community is worth fighting for, my people are worth fighting for, our kids are worth fighting for. When the law passed, it was a huge victory. I mean, it was a huge moment. I was there to, see it signed. And I remember going out in the hall and just screaming once the Senate passed the bill, because you have to be super quiet when they're like voting on it. And just going out into the hall, I'm like, oh my gosh, we did it. We changed the law.
now we are required to get a natural hair license. I just think about the amount of time and even money it saves someone. So instead of having to go through, 2 years of school, now, you just have to know that you're competent around safety and sanitation, and that you know the basics of hair and hair structure. January 2nd, when the license became available, I was the first person in line. I was like, I'm going to take this test. I'm going to be the first person to get the license, and then the first person to open just the natural hair salon in Portland. Foster families who call in, they get a discount. My heart was always to serve, families who've adopted or have kids from the foster care system. I feel like I've never been so brave. I've never been so gung-ho about something. Like, no, this is something that I'm doing for my community. And I remember telling that to one of the lobbyists. I'm not here about money. I'm here about the people in my community. I want the kids in my community to be able to have people volunteer to do their hair for them if they need it done. Going forward, I have to really think about, is it important to me that I really grow this business and all these ideas that I have, or do I just kind of want to keep it where it is? And so I guess you'll have to wait to see which one I do. I give it away too easy. I can try to pretend that I'm leaving you a cliffhanger, but I.
Okay, so again, that's just one example and one story of someone who saw something that needed to happen in their community and worked with the legislature to make it happen. So I'm going to, I think, give us a break time. Uju, do you feel like this is a good
Yes, I think this is
time to break?
Yeah, it feels good.
Okay. I'm putting up my favorite. That's my grandson Talib. And just a good reminder that it's important to take breaks and take care of yourself in advocacy. The work is important, but your family and friends are important too. The work will be here, it's never ending, but make sure to take time for yourself and your family as you're doing this advocacy work. And Uju, I'm not sure how long you had planned for a break.
So yes, so we were gonna go for a 10-minute break. So if we break now, we'll come back around 6:17.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, so folks, we'll be back at 6:17. All right, folks, hopefully you're back at 6:17. So we are gonna resume the presentation and I will pass it back to Lakeitha.
All right, I'm back. And can you all see my screen still? Okay. All right, so again, I wanted to share Amber's story. Her story is just one of my favorites of again, everyday folks who see a need, making a difference in policy. I talked a little bit about the lack of diversity in the legislature in the past. And so in 2013, when Amber brought her bill, this is what the Senate looked like. And so as you can imagine, there weren't many people in that group who would have understood Black hair care, what, the experience of Black children in foster care systems, getting their hair done. And so this law may not have ever been changed if we were waiting on these legislators to do something. And so I just want to, again, remind you that you're the expert, and how important it is to bring your ideas and expertise to the legislature. So we'll talk a little bit about how a bill becomes a law. This document is available on the Oregon Legislative website. And it seems like a lot, but ultimately the role of an advocate is to bring the information and share your stories and expertise. There are folks who are paid to do the rest of the stuff. And so as you'll see, it starts with an idea to change, amend, or create a new law. And those are presented by, a concerned Oregonian, a group, or a legislator. And so you suggest an idea for legislation, and then a legislator or legislative committee sponsors the bill. The legislator or legislative committee decides to sponsor the bill and introduces it to the House or Senate, and requests that the attorney in the legislative counsel's office draft the bill in the proper legal language. So you don't have to have a dissertation about what the problem is and what the solution is. You don't have to know exactly what you want the law to look like. There are people who are paid to do that. They are, again, the legislative counsel office, and they will draft a bill. They'll double check to make sure that, the idea doesn't conflict with other legislation, that it doesn't violate the Constitution, that there aren't similar bills already that may make the bill not necessary. And so again, it's up to a person to bring in the idea. You don't have to have it fully fleshed out, but to bring it to your legislator. And so what you notice in the video that Amber, her senator said, Amber reached out to me. And so that's one of the first steps, is identifying who your legislator is, who represents you. And so once you have those bills drafted, once you get a legislator who's going to be your champion, usually that's your legislator, the person who represents you. But when you're working with organizations like OHAY, it may be the committee, a committee bill. And so you may go to the healthcare committee and ask the chairs to draft a bill for you. There are some limits on bills. And so, legislators there are more limits on bills during short sessions rather than long sessions. And committees have a certain number of bills that they can move forward. But ultimately, legislators in a long session can draft as many bills as they want. But again, that goes to capacity and being able to manage all of those bills. And so, again, I'll walk you through a little later how to connect with your legislator and bring those ideas. But once the bill is drafted by the council, it's introduced and read for the first time on the House floor. And when we say read, it basically says a bill related to this, except one of the tactics is that the minority party can ask that each bill be read word for word. It's not a requirement, but it's something that actually the minority party has been doing the last 2 years to slow things down and to try to get their way and negotiate. So just to be aware of that, that bills don't have to be, when it says bill is read, it doesn't mean that it's read word for word, but sometimes they are. And again, there are some bills that are 22 pages long and some that are 81. And so the legislature actually has gone to, for longer bills, they have an automated system that reads the bills out loud right now. But usually it's a person. So that's, again, if you see that, that's a tactic that's used by the minority party to leverage some of the power. Once the bill is introduced, the Speaker of the House or the President of the Senate assigns it to a committee. And we'll talk a little more about committees shortly, but ultimately the Speaker and the President decide which committee. And so, for example, with Amber's bill, it could have gone to a variety of committees, but part of it was around business and labor. So negotiating, the impact on businesses if this law was changed. And so sometimes things seem like they might fit into one policy area, but it might need to go to a different policy area. And again, the Speaker will decide that. And so you don't have to know what committee you want your bill to go to again. The committees hold public hearings. That's where the voices of the people who are either passionate about the bill or against the bill get to come and speak out. All bills have to have hearings. They can't just move forward without having hearings or work sessions. And so again, that's the part of engagement that's important is, legislators can hear a bill and say, that sounds like a great idea. You can hear the same bill and you're like, wait, no, I'll be impacted by that. And this is not a great idea, or this is a great idea, but you need to consider something else, or here's some other things to consider. And so, that's ultimately where a lot of the decisions get made, is after legislators have heard the stories. They get emails from constituents, so you don't have to always go and testify. You can submit written testimony to the committee. You can reach out to your legislator. You can reach out to all the legislators on a specific committee by sending them an email. So there are a lot of ways to engage. It doesn't always require you to show up and share your stories, but there's power in sharing your story and expertise. It's often what sways legislators when they're deciding what bills to support. So again, these other pieces, the bills, the committees decide whether to pass it with the amendment, to not pass it. It goes back to the other chamber for reading and debate. There's more public hearings, so things have to pass in both the Senate and the House, and they have to agree. So sometimes bills are amended. If they're amended, they have to go back to the body that introduced it, and both bodies have to agree on the same language. And then once it's passed in both the House and the Senate, it gets sent to the governor, and the governor can either decide to sign it, to not sign it, or to veto it. And so if the governor signs it, it takes effect on the date that is listed in the bill. So often bills have a certain date that they take place. A bill can become a law without the governor's signature. And then if the governor vetoes, it goes back to the body and can be redebated and go through the process again. But again, the biggest part of the engagement is that part around sharing, the early on part, introducing your idea, and then the other part is sharing your story and information. Those are the biggest parts of engaging in this process. The other parts, the legislators and the people who are paid to do the work do much of the work. So I want to show you, if you don't already know who represents you, I'll show you really quickly how to find your legislator and how to begin engaging with them. Sorry. All right, can you see where it says legislator lookup? Am I sharing that part? Okay, So what you do is on the Oregon Legislature website, you will type in your address and click find who represents me. And so as you can see here for this person, their representative is Rob Nose. Their senator is Kathleen Taylor. And I won't do the Congress, but you can find out who your congressperson is too. Once you found who represents you, you can email them directly by clicking on their email address, or you can click on their legislator page. And then you can subscribe to, often they have newsletters, so you can subscribe to their newsletters. That's one way to connect with your legislator and keep up with what's going on. You can find out who their staff is. You can find out what they are passionate about. And you all can see this, right? So you'll see it says sign up for my newsletter. You can reach out to share your perspective on bills that are coming up. This legislator offers you information on how to testify, how to contact their office. And so again, legislators are super accessible, but one of the quick ways that you can get involved is to find out who your legislator is. Sign up for their newsletters, follow them on social media. All of our legislators have social media. And so that's one good start there. Let me stop sharing that. Go back to. I'll actually put the link in the chat also on how to find your legislator here. And are you all seeing the PowerPoint again? So here are some ways to engage with your legislator. To send an email, when you send emails, try to include your address or mention that you are a constituent. There are some legislators who mostly respond to, or at least prioritize responding to constituents. So meaning the people who they represent. Share what you care about, offer up your expertise. As I mentioned before, remember you are an expert in your own life and the impact that policy will have on your community. Include your affiliations if possible. So if you're participating with OHAY, mention that in your communication. That lets folks know that it's not just you, that you have folks who are supporting you and connected with. Say that I'm open to sharing my story about, whatever it is that you're interested in. Share your policy ideas. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect or fully fleshed out. We have the folks who will get that right. Number one, be nice to your legislative staff. And so legislative staff are the first ones who see emails. They're the ones who respond to requests for meetings. And so they kind of hold in their hand what level of access you get and response you get. And so that's one thing I'll always encourage folks is to be nice to the legislative staff. Show up to your legislators' town halls or constituent coffees, and invite them to your business or workplace or school. That's how they learn and get to know better, what's going on in the community and the impact that either that they're having or that they need to have. So a few other ways to engage are through policy committees. And so as I mentioned, you can either ask your legislators to sponsor legislation, or you can go directly through a policy committee. And so Like it says here, committees are made up of small groups of legislators from both parties, and they deal with related issues such as transportation, revenue, education, labor, and economic development. The chairpersons are appointed by their presiding officers, and the committee chairpersons have the power to determine which measures will go on the committee agenda. And here, this is that major part I mentioned again. Committee members consider the testimony of Oregonians, lobbyists in business and education, government agency representatives during public hearings. So that's where they often get their information and where they make the deciding, how they decide how they're going to vote. One of the other areas is policy work groups. And so sometimes a bill doesn't pass. And so those who are sponsoring it will go back and say, let's do a policy work group and see how we can refine this policy. Let's see if we can come to some sort of better understanding or agreement. Sometimes bills direct the formation of a new policy work group and to come back and report to the legislature what the research found, or what kind of other considerations that the committee should consider. And so that's another way to engage. And I'll tell you, one of the things that's happened in the past, like I was invited to participate in a policy work group that was about juvenile expungement of criminal records. And when I got into the room, there were judges, there were lawyers, there were people who worked in the court system, there were police officers, and there were no juveniles who had been impacted by having a criminal record or having their record expunged. And so that was my first question, is where are the people who are most impacted? And so as much as possible, if you, again, once you let your legislator know things you're interested in, they may invite you to participate in policy work groups. And it's really important for folks who have lived experiences to be part of those groups, because if not, folks are making decisions for communities that they're not a part of and that they don't understand. Another way to engage is through boards and commissions. So the governor there are about 250 boards and commissions. Here are just a few. And there are boards and commissions for almost everything. There's a denture board and commission, but you can see there's ocean policy, there's the lottery commission, liquor control, commission on disabilities. So almost anything that you may be passionate about, there's a commission or a board. Those commissions are ultimately appointed by the governor, but can be recommended by a legislator. They're also online. You can, if you go to the Oregon.gov board list, you can see which boards have vacancies. And last year we passed a bill that will, for many of the boards and commissions, compensate participants for their time. I think what legislators recognize that it was unfair to ask people to participate in these boards and commissions, participate their time and share their expertise and not be paid for it. And so that law passed last year. And so many of the boards and commissions are paid positions. And again, this is another important way. A lot of bill ideas come out of those policy commissions, and bills are sent to some of those commissions once they're passed for them to figure out the actual implementation of those bills. And then another way to engage is through advocacy commissions. There are 4 advocacy commissions. They are made up of leaders in those communities, and they inform the governor, they inform legislators about specific issues related to those communities, and to state agency leadership. And so those 4 commissions are the Commission on Asian Pacific Islander Affairs, Oregon Commission on Black Affairs, and Oregon Commission on Hispanic Affairs, and then the Oregon Commission on Women. And those all include community member seats on those commissions too. And so that's another way to engage. And so that's all I had. I'm available for questions. or comments. And if you would like to ask some questions, I'm available.
Thank you, Lakeitha. I'll monitor the chat box and the Q&A to see if any
Okay.
come up. Or while folks are thinking, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking of Amber's story and you mentioning like reaching out to your legislator or like a committee. I wonder how like early or like when is the timeline, like thinking of the long session or the short session to do that reaching out? Because things happen, seem to happen so fast.
They do, especially in the short session. They happen pretty quickly. Deadlines for policies for the long session aren't until around December. So between now and December, reaching out and connecting, I would say would be good. But starting to develop those relationships with your legislators, you know, now. Also because having those relationships, like it's not necessarily just a one-way street, that legislators often reach out to their constituents and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think about this? And so again, it's good to just have those relationships. It's good for them to know who their constituents are. And so if they're moving a bill and they're like, oh, I know Uju is really passionate about healthcare, perhaps they'll come and testify, you know, on this bill and reach out. And so it's never too early to start building the relationships. Like I said, the bill deadlines are around December, early January to get your bill ideas in.
Thank you. That piece about building relationships, yeah, it keeps coming up. It's very, very important.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, it's my legislator connected with me at a PTA meeting, and you know, and so like they're in the community and connecting, and so that, like recognizing that importance of being, you know, them being in community too. And so in my day job, I'm a community engagement director, and part of my role specifically is focused on marginalized communities and communities of color. And a lot of my work is working with legislators to help them understand how to deeply engage in their community, how to get outside of their small, you know, like perhaps they're a stay-at-home mom. And so almost all the people they talk to are the stay-at-home moms, but helping them understand how to engage in other communities that aren't familiar to them. And so legislators have been being trained and supported in doing that work and making sure they're engaging in spaces that they may not regularly engage.
Thank you, Lakeitha. And we have a question, so I'll read it out loud for folks.
Okay.
How difficult is it to get backing from a legislator without the aid of a community organization or group that has experience affecting policy?
I think a lot of it depends on the legislator, but for the most part, it's not hard, especially if it's something that your legislator, like if you're able to make them understand the impact. Most legislators will tell you, like, the best policy comes from people with lived experience. And even if you don't have an organization behind you, it's usually pretty simple, I would say. Yeah, it's you being able to tell that story and share what the impact will make. I think making it relevant. And so like clicking on like where a district is and understanding a district that a person represents. And so the representative that I used to work for, Representative Janelle Bynum, actually served, so she served Clackamas County, Multnomah County. She had 5 different school districts. She had Damascus and part of East Portland and parts of Happy Valley. And so the experiences across that district were very different. And so there were some policy ideas that were great ideas, but you have to flesh out to how they'll impact all of the people in your district. And so just some of those considerations to think about as you're bringing ideas of how might this go over in this person's district, who else might be impacted. But again, you get to talk through and walk through some of those ideas with your legislator. But it is also helpful to have the backing of organizations and groups. And some groups, I will acknowledge, have different amounts of leverage and connection. And so there are some groups where when they speak, the legislators listen. They're like, oh yeah, if this group is for this, we know that this is good. And it just helps move forward a little, maybe a little easier sometimes. But if it's a really great policy idea and you don't have the organizational backing, that's fine too. The other thing is that once ideas are proposed, most organizations are following what policies are being proposed, and they will say, oh, this is a great idea. We want to jump on and engage around this policy. And so it doesn't necessarily even require you to be engaged in an organization, because often organizations will find policies that are important to them and work to support them.
If folks, thank you, Lakeitha. If folks have other questions, feel free to use the Q&A feature, or you can type it in the chat box. We have like 6 more minutes, so we got some time.
Mm-hmm. I am putting my email in the chat, so feel free to reach out to me if folks have other questions. If you haven't already, go to that link to find your legislator. We'll share that again.
And while you're doing that, Lakeitha, we have another question, which I will read out loud. So it is, what should you do if your legislator indicates that they don't have room for your idea right now?
One moment here. I would say my first step would be to connect with a committee chair. If it's, for example, if it's a health, reach out to the health committee chair and find out if they have the capacity for a committee bill. I think often, especially if it's short session, to perhaps wait until the long session. And then I think also, if you're not able to do that, if the legislator doesn't have the capacity, doing some of that engagement with, the boards and commissions or policy work groups helps get you a little further in the door and perhaps makes your idea more of a priority. There are some conversations about limiting bills even smaller in the short session. And so that long session is really going to be the key to getting more bills passed, is that because there are unlimited numbers during the long session. Mm-hmm. And then don't be afraid to reach out. Like I would say, start with your own legislator, but don't be afraid to reach out to other legislators who may have an interest in something. And so you may reach out to your legislator and you're like, I want to address homelessness. And that legislator lives in a community that doesn't have a high population of homelessness. And so they're not necessarily seeing the issue. But if you've gone to a legislative website and you see, oh, this person is really passionate about homelessness, or this legislator is really passionate about climate change, they're more likely to, to introduce a bill. And so that's definitely an option. It's not, like I said, legislators often prioritize hearing from constituents. That doesn't mean that they don't listen to other people who aren't their constituents. Here's the link to find your legislator also. All right. No more questions? No. All right. Uju, did you have some more information or final?
Yes, I was going to say thank you. If there are no other questions, and of course, Lakeitha has provided her email. But thank you so much, Lakeitha, for providing this like workshop and like getting us into information and learning more about how a bill becomes a law, and also like the value of sharing your story and relationship building and getting to that like bill to law process. I want to thank everyone else for coming, for the interpreters and captioners who helped make this also happen. Again, this is the first part of a series we're hoping to do throughout the year that kind of breaks like the legislative process session down, with the goal of like by the long session, like folks feel a little bit more acquainted and like comfortable engaging in this process and in the session. So look out for more. If you want to engage with OHEI in the future, become a member, or have more questions, have feedback about this event, because this was our first webinar. So, and you know, lessons are always being learned. Feel free to email me. I'll put my email in the chat box. But yes, thank you so much, Lakeitha. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. This session will be recorded, and once it's all ready to go, we'll send out a link to the recording to everybody. And sorry about the muting video hiccup, you know, we're learning and growing, but next time I got y'all. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
You did a great job, Uju, on behalf of the interpreters. Very, very well done.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you.
The prep and all that stuff was really helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
For sure. For sure. Take care and have a good rest of your week.
You too.
Bye-bye.